The north wind cut down like a blade, driving red dust and dry leaves across the barren prairie. Jonas Whitfield pulled his rawhide coat tight, shoulders bent against the saddle. His stallion snorted clouds of steam into the cold night. 2 years had passed since he last set foot in Redemption Creek. 2 years of drifting, herding cattle for trading outfits, sleeping under empty skies, taking coins from strangers with no ties. But tonight, he came home. The ranch lay in the hollow below, tucked between gray ridges. The house still stood, but the porch sagged. The stable leaned like it might give way, and the once white gate hung faded, as if draped in mourning cloth. Jonas knew every tree, every trail, yet they looked like memories belonging to another man, the man he had been before losing Eliza. That day came back sharp as ever. Eliza had laughed, telling him not to worry so much, and a moment later the horse had reared. Hooves thundered, voices cried out, and by the time Jonas reached her, it was too late. Her laughter seemed to linger in the wind, but her eyes had closed forever. He had once been the man who could drive hundreds of cattle through dust storms, who could raise a rifle against highwaymen, who could sweat and labor to stake out 600 acres. But before his wife's life slipping away, he was powerless. From that night on, every time he held their daughter Grace, he saw only Eliza's face, her eyes, her dimple at the chin, all of it, a cruel reminder. So he left. He placed the child in the hands of Mrs. Harker, the housekeeper, and walked away from the home, from his duty as a father. No explanation, no goodbye. He chose the road, a deserter from his own life. But then came the letter. Just a few trembling lines from Mrs. Harker. Grace does not speak. She only stares out the window. I sing, but it does not reach her. Jonas, the child needs her father. 12 words, enough to break down the wall Jonas had built these past 2 years. He was no longer a husband, but he was still a father. Tonight, he would have to face that truth. His horse stopped at the porch. Jonas drew a long breath, calloused hand trembling as it touched the latch. He braced for silence the cold house, the child sitting alone in shadows, wide eyes empty. He was ready to endure rejection, indifference, anything. What he did not expect. From upstairs drifted a song, soft, not polished like a singer's, but warm, a lullaby. Not just any lullaby, but the very one Eliza had sung for Grace, the song she had made up, humming through sleepless nights when the baby cried. The sound froze Jonas where he stood, as though someone had clamped a hand around his throat. He climbed the stairs, each step creaking under his boots. Candlelight spilled faintly through a door left ajar. Jonas pushed it open. The room glowed with the scent of lavender soap and wood smoke. In the rocking chair where Eliza once sat, a young woman held Grace in her arms. Brown arms shielded the small body, her face turned in profile, lips closing around the last lines of the song. The child's cheek rested against her shoulder, asleep, tiny fingers curled in the fabric of her dress as though clutching the whole world. Jonas stood rooted in the doorway. Blood roared in his ears, heart pounding to the breaking point. It was not Eliza, but it was Eliza's song, living again through another voice, the voice of a young black woman he had never seen before. She did not know he was there. Her eyes remained closed, her hand tapping gently with the rhythm, as if the song flowed from her very bones. That tenderness, that devotion, it was as if Eliza herself had returned for a fleeting breath. The song ended. Silence filled the room. Grace's breathing was steady in sleep. The woman opened her eyes and slowly lifted her gaze. Dark, fathomless eyes met Jonas's. No cry, no startle, just a moment suspended where two strangers locked eyes and held. Jonas could not speak. His breath caught hard in his chest. Yet the woman did not flinch, did not look away. There was no fear there, no shame. Only calm acceptance, as if she had known this meeting must come. The wind slipped cold through the crack of the door, tilting the candle flame. Jonas's tall frame cast a long shadow across the floorboards. Selina Carter, her name he would soon learn, sat steady, clutching Grace to her chest, her gaze fixed on him. And in that hush, an unseen current leapt between them, pulling two lost souls closer. Not with words, but with the quiet knowing. From this night forward, neither of them could return to what they once were. Jonas stood frozen in the doorway, an intruder in his own home. His chest tightened beneath the weight of tangled emotions, relief, bitterness, guilt, and something sharp as envy. 2 years he had been gone, leaving his daughter to the care of others. And now, before his eyes, his child lay safe in another woman's arms, soothed to sleep by the lullaby of his late wife. Part of him sagged with relief. Grace was not hollow, not adrift as he had feared through nights of drunken haze beneath cold stars. She had a shoulder to rest on, arms to hold her close. But another part burned with jealousy. That was his place. He was the father. How had a stranger taken up the vow he once made to Eliza, that their child would never be left alone? The woman Selina shifted slightly, hair pinned tight with a few loose strands, brushing her cheek, her warm brown skin glowing in the candlelight. She pressed a finger to her lips, bidding silence for the child's sake. Jonas swallowed hard, his hand trembling into a fist. He was not ready for this meeting, yet there was no way back. Selina rose slowly, cradling Grace, her coarse dress brushing faintly, the scent of lavender mingling with wood smoke. She stepped to him, dark eyes steady, unflinching. Her voice, low but calm, broke the hush. "You must be Jonas Whitfield." He nodded, throat dry. All the questions jammed together, spilling out as one hoarse whisper. "Who are you?" "Selina Carter." She shifted the child against her shoulder, hand stroking gently down Grace's back to keep her asleep. "Widow. I came from Arkansas. Last spring Mrs. Harker gave me shelter and let me stay on. Since then I've kept the house and looked after Grace." The name fell from her lips as though it belonged to her. Jonas's heart clenched. He lowered his gaze to his daughter, lashes long against her cheek, face at peace against Selina's shoulder. He could not remember ever seeing her so content in sleep. Selina's voice softened. "She'll sleep sound through the night if there's a song. I only stumbled upon that tune, sang it once, and it calmed her. I don't know why." Jonas stiffened as if struck. It was no accident. That song belonged to Eliza, Maid of their nights, their vows, their love. Hearing it from another voice made him want to rage, to collapse. But he stood unmoving. Selina's gaze lingered. Then she extended the child toward him. "Would you like to hold her?" Jonas faltered. He had not thought the moment would come so soon. Grace felt smaller than he had remembered, but the warmth of her body sent a tremor through him. When his rough hand reached out, it brushed against Selina's. The briefest contact, skin to skin, warmth crossing the space, struck like lightning up his spine. She lifted her eyes to him, caught in his gaze for a breath, then lowered them quickly. Grace stirred faintly in his arms, lips pursing in sleep. Jonas held her close, breathing in the scent of child's hair mixed with linen. His knees nearly buckled. Tears burned behind his eyes, but he swallowed them down, chest heaving. For 2 years he had lived as a dead man, and now in his arms was what remained of Eliza alive, warm, still his. "She's at peace only when someone stays near," Selina murmured, afraid to disturb the child. "Mrs. Harker tried, others too, but Grace only settled when I held her. I think she needs the warmth." Jonas clenched his jaw. He knew it to be true. He had seen Eliza soothe Grace the same way, yet hearing it from Selina's mouth was another knife, one forged of both gratitude and resentment. She had been here, while he fled. She had given what he would not. Silence stretched. Only the wind pressed at the shutters. Only Grace's soft breath filled the room. Jonas drew a breath, his voice strained. "You're not afraid of me?" Selina blinked. "Why should I be?" Men like me. People are often afraid. You're just a father coming home, she said, steady as stone. I see nothing fearful in that. He froze. Her words were not comfort, but truth spoken plain, and something loosened in his chest, as though a weight he had carried too long slipped free. He studied her. Slender frame, hands both strong and careful, a face still young but marked by shadows of loss he could not yet name. She bore the look of one who had known grief, yet refused to let it break her. Even asleep, Grace's fingers clung to a curl of Selina's hair. Jonas's heart ached at the sight. His daughter belonged to this woman in ways he had not expected, and he could not deny it. He was torn between jealousy and a piercing, unspoken gratitude. Selina stepped back, lowered her gaze. I'll leave you two alone. Grace needs her father more than anyone. She turned, and in that moment, Jonas caught the faint flicker in her eyes, a tremor she hid before leaving the room. He stood holding his child, heart pounding against her small body. The air smelled of lavender, smoke, and sleep. In that stillness, Jonas understood. The emptiness he left behind had been filled not with memories, but with a living soul, flesh and blood, dark eyes that had met his. And in that silence, he knew it was only the beginning. Dawn broke over Redemption Creek in a murky gray. Fog clung to the ridges, draping the ranch in damp chill. Inside the kitchen, no one spoke more than necessary. Knives struck cutting boards, dishes clattered faintly, yet every sound felt heavier than usual. Selina stood at the basin, her hands buried in warm suds, though unease prickled her skin, as if unseen eyes followed her every move. At the head of the table stood Mrs. Harker, the old housekeeper. She had kept the Whitfield household in order for decades, watched Jonas grow, watched Eliza in her youth. To her, the ranch meant more than walls and land. It was honor to be guarded. And since Selina's arrival, Mrs. Harker had carried a thorn of doubt. A black widow, appearing from nowhere in Arkansas, quickly taking Grace's trust. It could not all be chance. The air was taut already, but when Mrs. Harker spoke, the room froze. Selina Carter, come here. Selina set down the plate, wiped her hands against her apron. Her heart thudded, but her face remained calm. She stepped forward. Yes, ma'am? No answer at first. Instead, Mrs. Harker drew something from her pocket. In the firelight, it gleamed gold. An old pocket watch, polished to shine. Selina stopped short. This, Mrs. Harker said, her voice dry, I found in your bottom drawer. The kitchen fell silent. The cook, the stable boy, every head lowered, eyes averted. Selina's eyes widened, then shook her head. No, I never. Do not deny it. The housekeeper cut her off, her eyes sharp with accusation. This was Mr. Whitfield's watch, left to Jonas, kept safe by me all these years. Worth more than money, it is legacy. And now it lies hidden in your room. Explain. The fire's heat could not push back the cold descending over the room. Blood drained from Selina's face. Her lips parted, closed again. No defense seemed strong enough to pierce that silence. I did not take it, she said at last, voice quiet but firm. Then how did it end up there? Selina shook her head, hands clasped tight at her chest. I do not know, but it was not me. No one spoke. Even the flames seemed to still. To them, she was only a poor widow, with no kin, no name. Who would believe her? The back door opened suddenly. Cold wind swept in with heavy boots. Jonas entered, coat damp with mist, gloves dark with dew. He halted at the sight. The household ringed around Selina, Mrs. Harker holding the watch like a verdict. What's going on? His voice was rough, low. Mr. Jonas, Mrs. Harker said, half proud, half pained. I found your father's watch in this girl's room. She denies it, but the truth is plain. Jonas stepped closer. eyes moving from the watch to Selina's face. She stood straight, chin lifted, eyes dry but unyielding, not the gaze of guilt, rather of one who bore injustice, knowing defense would be wasted. He reached out, took the watch. Its weight pressed into his palm, familiar, heavy with memory. His father's pride, the symbol of their line. Jonas turned it over, tracing the old scratches, then lifted his gaze back to Selina. The room tightened like a bowstring. All eyes waited for his word. Jonas exhaled, slow, then spoke. If she wanted a watch, I would give her 10. Silence dropped sharp as a cut. Mrs. Harker's face went blank, mouth parting without sound. The cook nearly dropped her ladle. The stable boy's eyes grew round. Jonas set the watch on the mantel, where all could see. His voice hardened. But I do not believe Selina Carter is a thief. She is not the sort to take what is not hers. He had not raised his voice, yet the words struck like iron. Breath returned to the room, though unease lingered. Mrs. Harker's face flushed pale, her composure cracking. Mr. Jonas, I only... Enough. His tone cut clean, firm without force. This matter ends here. The servants dispersed quietly, scattering like startled birds. None wished to linger. Only Selina remained, her hands still clasped, her body still. For the first time, Jonas truly looked at her, and he saw her eyes dark, glimmering in the firelight. Not from tears, but from something deeper. A flicker, fragile and strange. She lowered her gaze to hide it, but he had already caught it. In that moment lay a spark of feeling she had never allowed herself, for no one had believed her, no one had stood at her side, until now. No more words were spoken, yet in the silence, a line invisible had been drawn, stretched between them thin, trembling, undeniable. Jonas turned away, but the warmth of the watch still burned in his hand, just as the memory of Selina's eyes lingered in him. The house settled back to its quiet, but nothing within it was the same. That afternoon the sky darkened low on the horizon, clouds gathering heavy, but no one paid them much mind. Selina laid a small cloth across the porch step and sat with Grace. The child liked that spot, feet swinging free, her unruly hair catching the wind. Selina set down a plate of fresh corn cakes, golden crisp, Grace's favorite. You sit here, I'll fetch a bit of honey, Selina said, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's face. Grace nodded, wide eyes fixed on the far-off sky. Selina smiled, carried the empty dish back inside. Only heartbeats later, a strange whistle of wind ripped through the air. Then the heavens split. Thunder rolled down the valley, shaking the porch. Selina turned, a fresh plate in hand, fragrant with butter. But when she stepped back through the door, her heart dropped. The chair was empty. Grace? Her voice cracked. No answer, only the sharp lash of wind lifting the porch cloth into the storm. The dish slid from her hand, shattering on the step. Selina's eyes darted, chest heaving. Beyond the porch, the henhouse door flapped wild in the gale. Instinct clenched tight inside her. Grace had run that way, chasing some vision only a child could see. In the thick of storm, a shadow, a voice, perhaps nothing at all. A bolt of lightning split the sky, and then the storm broke loose. Grace! Selina cried, skirts whipping around her legs as she tore into the rain. Behind the ranch, the path had turned to a rushing stream. Water surged to her knees, then her waist, dragging at every step. Jonas, fighting through the downpour from the barn, caught sight of her, Selina pushing into the flooded yard toward the old shed he had once promised to tear down. Its rotted door slammed against its frame, groaning, about to give. Inside, Grace wailed, trapped. Selina! Jonas bellowed, but she pressed on, bracing against the torrent. A plank struck her arm, splitting the skin, yet she didn't falter. Small as she was, she fought through mud and current. her dark eyes fierce with the fire of someone who would not yield where a child's life was at stake. Jonas's blood iced. She would die if she kept on. He plunged in, water biting like knives. Mud gripped his boots, but he forced through, heart pounding. As the shed door buckled, he saw her slip inside, just in time. A breath later she emerged. Grace clutched tight against her chest. The child screamed, tiny fists clinging to her neck. Selena's hair streamed wet, her face smeared with mud, yet her gaze burned steady. In that instant, Jonas thought he had never seen anything so terrifying, or so beautiful. "Give her to me!" he roared, surging forward. The flood spun them off balance. Jonas locked an arm around Selena's waist, his other hand seizing Grace. They collided, bodies soaked, breaths ragged against each other's skin. Selena staggered, but Jonas held her firm. His strength, honed from years breaking wild horses, braced against the torrent. All three fought the water's pull, each step a battle. Selena's shoulders trembled, lungs gasping, yet she never loosened her grip on the child. Jonas growled, teeth clenched, crushing them both to his chest. He shouted in her ear, "Hold on to me!" She nodded, hands slick and shaking as they clamped onto his shoulders. The flood roared around them, but in that chaos their bodies pressed close, breath hot against cold rain, their lives bound together in one desperate struggle. Jonas threw his weight, turning broadside against the current to shield them. Stagger by stagger, he drove forward, and somehow, like a miracle, he hauled them onto the porch. The back door gaped wide, firelight flickering warm inside. Jonas shoved them through, carrying Grace, half-lifting Selena. The house swallowed them, a glow of safety against the storm's rage. Grace was wrapped tight by the hearth, blankets piled high. She coughed, whimpered, then slowly quieted. Selena crouched beside her, hands trembling, hair plastered to her cheeks. Jonas dropped to one knee, his rough palm closing over her scraped hand. His chest still heaved, breath ragged. He looked at her lips pale with cold, eyes glistening, hands raw. He had never known a woman to risk her life so willingly for a child not her own. The thought struck him hard. She had done what even he might have failed to do. Rain hammered the porch. Jonas drew her close, arm sliding around her waist, pulling her against him. Their breath mingled, harsh, warm, alive in the bitter chill. Selena flinched faintly, but did not pull away. Her heartbeat thudded against his, wild and unsteady. "Thank you," Jonas rasped, voice breaking, "for saving my child." Selena said nothing. She only held his gaze, dark eyes steady, then lowered her head in a small nod. In the flicker of the firelight, that silence spoke louder than any words. The storm had passed. Only the thick scent of wet earth lingered, and the steady drip from the porch roof, ticking like the hand of a clock. Inside, fire crackled in the hearth, its glow climbing the damp wooden walls. The servants had slipped away to their quarters, leaving the room to three souls: Jonas, Selena, and Grace. Grace slept soundly on the settee, cheek pressed into a thick blanket, her small hands still twitching as if seeking something to hold. Jonas had sat beside her for a long time, listening to the even rhythm of her breath, grounding himself in the fragile warmth he had nearly lost. At last his gaze turned to Selena. She sat near the fire, her slight frame wrapped in an old wool sweater. Her curls, soaked and tangled, clung to her neck and shoulders, yet it was her hands that caught him. Both palms were torn, crisscrossed with cuts, streaked with drying blood. When she had soothed Grace earlier, he had seen them clearly, though she tried to hide it, never giving a sound of complaint. Jonas rasped, "Give me your hand." Selena startled, dark eyes glinting in the firelight. It's nothing. Give it here." His voice steadied, leaving no room to argue. For a heartbeat, she hesitated, then slowly offered it. Her hand was small, browned by sun, hardened by work hands made for labor. not for pampering. Jonas took it into his rough palm, and the sudden warmth startled him. Since Eliza's death, he had not touched another woman's hand. He turned aside, hiding the quiver in his chest, and rummaged for spirits and clean cloth. "It'll sting," he muttered. Selina gave only a faint nod. He soaked the rag and pressed it to the wounds. She flinched, breath catching, but not a sound escaped her lips. Jonas studied her profile. "You won't cry out?" "A cry changes nothing," she said evenly, eyes fixed on the fire. "Pain, either you endure it, or it consumes you." Jonas wound the bandage carefully. Each turn tightened around flesh that pulsed with a steady beat. His fingers brushed her skin, dark and thin, yet resilient. Firelight carved her face in stark relief. Eyes deep, nose straight, lips pressed firm. He had never noticed her so clearly until now. The silence deepened, filled only by the hiss of burning wood. Then Selina spoke, her voice low, husky. "When I was 17, I watched my father shot dead in our yard." Jonas froze, hands pausing over the bandage. He wasn't rich, but folks trusted him. When the war came, he wanted only to keep the land quiet, away from blood. One day, he found 2 young soldiers hiding near the creek. One couldn't have been 16. They were starving, dying of thirst. He gave them bread, water, showed them a way around the patrols. Someone saw, someone told. 2 days later, soldiers came. They tied him with others and shot them before our eyes. Her voice faltered, but did not break. I hid in the loft, looking down. I didn't scream. I didn't weep. I just stood like stone. That picture, it's still here. She touched her chest. My mother collapsed that day. She followed him soon after. My little brother, he hasn't spoken a word since. Jonas bowed his head, still holding her hand. He did not search for comfort, knowing words could not touch such grief. Selina's eyes glimmered in the fire. Later, I trusted someone, an officer. Different, I thought. He talked of books, of music. I let myself believe. But he was the one who signed the order to kill my father. Years later, he sent a letter, an apology, said it was war. I burned it. The fire snapped, shadows leaping high on the walls. Jonas felt her pain coil tight around his own heart, as though her wounds bled into his. Selina turned her bandaged hand, a weary smile curling at her lips. Afterward, I married. A schoolteacher, kind but frail. Fever took him at Fort Smith. Since then, I wandered. No one left. No place left. Redemption Creek. I thought at least I could find a roof against the rain. Her words fell into the room like stones into still water, heavy and final. The wind whispered faint outside. Jonas set aside the cloth, yet kept her hand in his, longer than he should have. She lifted her eyes to him, and for the first time Jonas did not see her as a servant, nor as a wanderer beneath his roof. He saw her as a woman, scarred, battered, yet proud and unbroken. Stronger, perhaps, than he had been, for she had stood through her storms while he had fled his. And if not for her, Grace would be gone. Without thought, his calloused fingers brushed the tender skin of her wrist, right where the pulse fluttered. Selina did not pull back. Their breath mingled, warm in the quiet, close enough that he could hear her heartbeat quicken. The fire's light danced across the walls, kindling something neither dared to name. Jonas found his gaze locked to hers, and she did not look away. That night, with the storm still echoing beyond the walls, 2 broken souls recognized one another. Not in words, not in promises, but in the brush of a bandaged hand, and in eyes that lingered too long in the glow of the fire. The house carried the scent of damp wool and wood smoke, heavy but strangely warm. Outside, the wind had eased, leaving only the drip from the eaves, steady and hollow, a reminder that the flood had come and gone, carrying with it both fear and change. Grace slept deeply on the settee, her small body curled beneath a wool blanket. Her face softened in the fire's glow. For the first time in months, her lips curved faintly, as if she dreamed of something gentle. Jonas bent, pulling the blanket higher around her, then lingered, watching. Only when he was certain her sleep was true did he release a long breath. Selina sat near the hearth, her back curved with weariness. She had changed into dry clothes, her hair tied low, loose strands glinting in the firelight. Her bandaged hands rested on her knees, her gaze sunk into the flames as if hiding from herself. Jonas moved closer, settling beside her. Neither spoke. The crackle of the logs filled the quiet. The space between them was smaller than they realized. Jonas felt the heat of her body mixing with the faint scent of lavender. He had not sat so near a woman since Eliza's passing. Part of him resisted the part still bound by grief and guilt. Yet another part trembled, longing to reach toward the life burning beside him. Selina turned, her dark eyes meeting his. No reproach, no challenge, only a stillness that made Jonas feel truly seen. His chest tightened, as if pulled by an invisible cord. Slowly, he lifted a hand. His rough fingers brushed the curve of her cheek, trembling, as though he feared his own touch. He meant to draw back, but Selina did not move. Her lashes fluttered, a breath left her lips, and she leaned ever so slightly into his palm. The distance vanished. Jonas bent, his mouth finding hers tentative at first. A test. Selina answered, hesitant but true. The kiss was no rush, no fevered grasp, but tender, like a confession carried too long. Pain and loss ebbed away in the mingling of breath. Outside, the world lay hushed after the storm. Inside, they found harbor in each other. Jonas drew her against him, arms circling her waist. She trembled, not with fear, but with the release of letting herself be vulnerable. Her hand found his shoulder, holding fast, as if to be sure this was not some fragile dream. They lowered together onto the rug before the fire, amber light washing over their skin. Every movement was unhurried, reverent, as though each second was worth holding. Jonas kissed the scars on her hands, each mark no longer a sign of suffering, but proof of strength. Selina touched his face, and for the first time saw in his gray eyes not only darkness, but a plea for forgiveness and a hunger to live again. That night they gave themselves to one another, not with vows, but with trust, with the fragile gift of being allowed to be weak in each other's arms. It was not a storm's fire, but warmth, steady and quiet, as if two broken pieces had finally found a way to fit whole. Later, Jonas lay on his side, holding Selina close. She rested against his chest, her breathing slowing. The fire burned low, embers glowing, yet warmth lingered between them. Jonas studied her face in the dimness, his hand resting at her hip, as if to claim this as real. For 2 years he had not known unbroken sleep. Each night had dragged him through Eliza's laughter cut short, through blood and stone, through loss that never loosed its grip. But this night, for the first time, his eyes closed in peace. No haunting, no guilt, only the steady rhythm of the woman in his arms, and the soft breath of the child nearby. Jonas drifted into slumber, a rare gift he did not fight. Somewhere deep within, he knew, he had found a new shoulder to lean on, not to replace what was lost, but to walk beside him into what lay ahead. The morning after the storm held a strange calm. Dew clung to the porch rail, sunlight breaking across puddles scattered like sheets of gold. The barn bore a gaping wound where the wind had torn loose a wall. Fences leaned half broken, but Jonas carried no dread for any of it. The greatest fear had passed. Grace lived, her laughter still present even in dreams. He woke later than habit, the first peaceful sleep he had known in 2 years. Selina lay beside him, curls spilled unruly on the pillow, shoulders rising and falling with steady breath. Jonas sat still, watching, caught between the strangeness of it and the deep familiarity that warmed his chest. The rhythm of hooves at the gate pulled him back. He rose reluctantly, pulling on boots to meet the messenger. A letter was handed over, addressed to Jonas Whitfield alone. The paper was worn, the script slanted, and at once it stirred memory. Judith Lane, his mother's old friend, the woman who once read him verses when he was a boy. The note was brief, but each line cut deep. Jonas read it again and again. Its truth was plain. Selina was no nameless servant. She was the daughter of Henry Carter, the man who, in the drought years, had lent horses to Jonas's father, saving the Whitfield ranch from ruin. A benefactor, a name once spoken with honor, and Selina was his blood, his only legacy. Jonas folded the letter, the room tilting around him. Selina, the woman who had sung Grace to sleep, who had thrown herself into the flood to save the child, who had sat by the fire telling her wounds, was the daughter of the man who had once saved his family. For months she had scrubbed floors, carried water, endured the sting of suspicion and the weight of scorn. And he had not seen. His mind returned to the morning Mrs. Harker accused her of theft. Selina had stood tall, silent, pride burning through her eyes, though words failed her. Jonas had defended her, then only by instinct. Now he understood the pride belonged to Henry Carter's line. Shame burned in him for not knowing sooner. Through the window he saw her. Selina sat with Grace at the table, guiding the child's small hands as she threaded a needle through fabric. Grace giggled, cheeks flushed, and Selina bent low, eyes soft, as though the girl were her own flesh. The scene was gentle, ordinary, and it cut Jonas to the quick. She had filled the space he abandoned, while he had been drowning himself in ghosts. He stepped onto the porch, the letter crackling in his hand. Selina looked up at his shadow, her smile faltering at the heaviness on his face. "Jonas?" she asked quietly. He stood still, eyes fixed on hers. "I know now. You're Henry Carter's daughter." Selina froze, the needle slipping from her fingers. The seconds stretched long before she lowered her head, her voice barely audible. "I never meant to hide it. I just didn't want to be treated differently. I didn't want pity, or to be told I belonged here only because of my father's name. I wanted to stand by my own hands." Jonas came closer, holding out the letter. "Judith Lane told me all. Selina, you're no lodger. You bear the Carter name. And your father, he saved this ranch." She said nothing, her lashes trembling. She turned aside, as if to shield the trembling in her eyes. "That name, it's brought me nothing but loss. I don't need it spoken again. The past already took everything." Jonas set a firm hand on her shoulder, for the first time, without hesitation. "No, the past stole too much from you, but it also left this truth: you deserve to be seen for who you are. Selina Carter, daughter of a good man. And I," his voice caught, "I am ashamed it took me this long to see." Selina lifted her gaze at last. In those dark eyes he found both pride and pain, the look of one who had fought her way upright against a lifetime of storms. Her face glowed in the spill of light through the doorway, a face Jonas knew he would never forget. In that moment he understood. This was no mere debt of family, no matter of honor owed. It was a turning in his own heart, a recognition that the woman before him was bound not only to his past, but to whatever future he might yet claim. In a small town, gossip never needed to be spoken plain. A raised brow, a sideways glance, a sigh placed just so that was enough. Mrs. Harker knew this better than anyone. She never said the words outright, but each pursed lip and shake of her head sowed seeds that others eagerly watered. "That girl has lingered too long under the Whitfield roof," she murmured one afternoon at the general store, stacking bolts of cloth. "A colored widow, no kin of theirs, and yet always seen at Mr. Jonas's side, closer than family." She let her hand tremble faintly, as though hiding some unspoken truth, and left the rest for others to embroider. By sundown, Redemption Creek hummed with it. Some said Selena used her looks to worm her way into Jonas's trust. Others claimed she had set a snare for his heart, biding her time until the Whitfield ranch fell into her lap. With each retelling, the tales grew bolder, whispers of, "I saw them by the fire," or "Jonas has forgotten his late wife already." The rumor slid easily from tavern to church, from marketplace to pasture. Men smirked, women tutted with false pity, but in every eye there was the same glint: contempt for Selena. Jonas kept mostly to the ranch in those days, mending the storm damage, tending cattle, reckoning what had been lost. He did not hear the voices at first, but Selena did. One morning at the well, she caught two ministers' wives whispering, their gaze crawling down her dress as they clutched their pails. Another noon, carrying parcels to the milkman's cart, the stable boy shifted under her look, stammering, "Miss May," they're saying, but dared not finish. Selena forced a smile, but her steps back to the house wavered. That evening, while the kitchen still smelled of cornbread, Selena began to pack, quietly, deliberately. She did not weep or curse, she only folded. The one good dress left to her, a handful of coins tied in cloth, the worn storybooks Grace loved to hear. Piece by piece, she filled a small canvas bag. The door creaked. Grace shuffled in, hair tousled, clutching her rag doll. "What are you doing?" the child asked, voice thick with sleep. Selena startled, turning to shield the bag. "Nothing, sweetheart. Go back to bed." But Grace did not move. She crossed the floor slowly, bare feet whispering against the boards. Setting the doll on the table, she wrapped her arms around Selena's waist. "Don't go." Selena froze, breath catching. Her arms dropped around the girl, pulling her close. "Grace, don't go, Mama," the child whispered, the words soft as a sigh. "Mama," clear, whole, without stumble. Selena went rigid, tears flooding her eyes before she could stop them. Since Eliza's death, the child had never spoken that name to anyone. And now, in her small, unguarded voice, she had given it to Selena, the woman with no claim but lullabies, patience, and arms to hold her through the night. Selena clutched Grace tighter, her whole body trembling. She wanted to protest that she was unworthy, that she was not truly mother, that she was only a shadow lodging under another's roof. But her throat sealed, no sound would come. Her tears fell into the child's hair. "You'll stay, won't you? You won't leave me?" Grace asked. Eyes shut, tiny fist gripping Selena's sleeve with desperate strength. Selena could not answer. She lowered her lips to the child's brow, whispering as if to herself, "If only I could." Outside, night wind swept across Redemption Creek, carrying with it the sting of every whispered word. But in the quiet kitchen, within the arms of a child who had called her Mama, Selena knew with painful clarity, whatever choice she made, her heart was bound to break again. Dawn crept gray across the sky, heavy clouds dragging low as if carrying the same sorrow lodged in her chest. In the small room beside the kitchen, Selena folded the last kerchief with steady hands. Her canvas bag was packed, neither heavy nor full, her whole life gathered into something that could be slung over one shoulder. She let her gaze travel the room. It had never been hers, not truly just a corner to rest after long days. Yet traces lingered, a ribbon Grace had forgotten on the shelf, the slim picture book the child loved her to read, the wooden chair Jonas had mended after the flood. None of it belonged to Selena, yet each piece tugged at her. Drawing a breath, she lifted the bag and stepped into the hushed hall. Just the yard, just the road, and she would return to wandering, no whispers, no scorn, no eyes that cut her down. But quick, small footsteps pattered behind. "Mama!" Selena froze, her heart twisting. Grace hurtled forward, eyes still swollen from the night's tears. She wrapped both arms around Selena's legs, tiny hands trembling. "Don't go, Mama. Stay with me." Selena dropped the bag, knelt, and pulled the child close. The warmth of Grace's body unraveled her strength. "Sweetheart, You must be strong. I can't. Her voice cracked apart. I don't want to be strong. I just want Mama. Grace sobbed, tears soaking through Selena's shoulder. Selena shut her eyes, stroking the child's tangled hair. The pain split her chest, but she could not let weakness tether Jonas and Grace to the town's poisoned tongues. A sound cut through the hall, heavy, deliberate. Jonas stood in the doorway, his frame dark against the dim light. Shirt half-buttoned, hair unkempt, eyes rimmed red, whether from sleeplessness or fury, she could not tell. You mean to leave? His voice was hoarse, echoing down the passage. Selena clutched Grace tighter, saying nothing. Jonas strode forward, snatching the bag from the floor. You think you can vanish without a trace? After all of this, you'd walk away from her? From me? Jonas. Her words broke in her throat. You know what this town island, they will not relent. They look at me as if I schemed for all of this. If I stay, Grace bears it too. I won't let her grow beneath their whispers. Jonas's fist whitened on the bag's strap, his eyes burning. His words came like sparks struck on steel. I don't give a damn what they say. I lost Eliza. I ran like a coward. I won't lose again. Not you, not Grace. Selena shook her head, tears spilling. What we feel, it cannot stand against their scorn. They'll always see me as an outsider, and you as blind. Jonas, this love. Selena. He cut her off, stepping closer. He set the bag aside, lowered to grasp her hand. I don't choose rumors. I choose you. The woman who sang my child to sleep when I could not step into her room. The woman who dove into the flood when the rest froze in fear. The woman who bore every cruel glance yet never bowed her back. I choose you, even if every soul in Redemption Creek turns from me. Her body trembled in his hold, torn between trust and terror. You don't understand. Prejudice can crush anyone. I've seen it. It took my father, my mother. I can't let you and Grace pay the same price. Jonas tipped her chin, forcing her eyes to his. Hear me, Selena Carter. I've lived too long in shadows. Last night I slept in peace for the first time in 2 years. Not because this town softened, but because you lay beside me. If it's between them and you, I'll choose you every time. Tears streaked her cheeks. She clung to Grace, heart split wide between fear and yearning. The child tilted her face up, eyes shining, and whispered, Mama, don't leave me. That moment broke her. She wanted to flee, to spare them, yet the child's arms anchored her, and Jonas's gaze, unyielding, wounded but unflinching, left her no refuge. The wooden house stood hushed, holding only Grace's sobs and the ragged breaths of 2 grown hearts. Outside, the sky hung ash-gray, sunlight yet to pierce through. But inside, something had shifted beyond undoing. Jonas had spoken aloud what once he dared not believe, and Selena was left to face the truth of her own heart, a heart with no room left for denial. That evening, the skies above Redemption Creek cleared to a rare brilliance. After weeks of gray, the clouds had scattered, leaving nothing but blue stretching to the distant ridges. The last of the day's light spilled gold across the ranch yard, gleaming off wet shingles and the freshly mended white fence. Jonas stood in the middle of it, a crooked wreath clutched in his rough hands. He had woven it himself, white daisies, sprigs of purple clover, stalks of sage from along the fence line. It was uneven, petals bruised, stems bent, but he held it as though it were treasure. His hand trembled, like that of a boy confessing love for the first time. Selena stepped from the kitchen, plain calico dress brushing her ankles, her curls loose at her neck. Grace bounded ahead, her little feet scattering dust, laughter rising bright in the cool breeze. She caught sight of the wreath and squealed. It's so pretty, Papa. Is it for me? Jonas knelt, brushed her hair back, and chuckled low. No, darling, not this one. He lifted his gaze to the porch, where Selena lingered beneath the eaves, her face caught between surprise and caution. The air stilled, A hush fell with the breeze, sage scent drifting. Jonas drew a deep breath and stepped forward. Each pace carried the weight of 2 years of regret, sleepless nights, the fear of losing once more. Selina, his voice cracked, husky. I have no gold ring, no preacher, no prayer spoken over us. But I have this. He held out the wreath, his hand visibly shaking. Her eyes widened. She took a small step back. Jonas, you. Let me speak. He closed the distance, his gaze locked on hers. The day Eliza died, I swore never to let my heart belong again. I thought that was the only way to honor her memory. I was wrong. Holding on to memory doesn't mean burying myself with it. And you, Selina? You've shown me life can begin again. Selina's bandaged hands clenched together, her chest rising fast. Between them, Grace stood still, her face shining, as if she too felt the weight of the moment. Jonas lifted the wreath, voice trembling yet sure. I won't promise that shadows will vanish, but I promise to walk forward with you, with everything I have left. Stay not as a servant, not as a guest, but as my wife, Selina Carter. Will you? Selina stood struck silent. The evening wind tugged at her skirts, light curling around her face. All the whispers, the stares, the contempt of the town pressed down at once. Fear clawed her heart. Could this love withstand the judgment of the world? She bowed her head, lips parted but voiceless. Grace tugged her sleeve, pleading, Mama, say yes, please. Selina looked down at the child, her eyes brimming with innocence and faith. Her mouth trembled. Then she raised her gaze to Jonas. His eyes held no pleading, no demand, only certainty, raw and steadfast. Slowly, she reached out. Her slender fingers, trembling, brushed into his calloused hand. She swallowed hard, tears sliding. I can't promise I'm strong enough to fight them all, but I know I don't want to leave again. If you are sure. I am. Jonas set the wreath into her hands. I've never been sure. In that instant, the clumsy circle of wildflowers became covenant. Selina clasped it close, her hands quaking but unwilling to let go. Grace clapped and danced around them, a small bird rejoicing. Jonas leaned his forehead to hers, breath mingling. From this day, I don't care what Redemption Creek says, I care only for us. Selina nodded faintly, her eyes wet but lit with fragile belief. Her hand tightened on his at last, no longer hiding. That evening, in the yard of the Whitfield Ranch, beneath golden light across the fields, there was no diamond ring, no ceremony, only a wreath of wildflowers, a man, a woman, and a child. Yet that vow, simple, trembling, was stronger than any stone wall. Jonas clasped her hand in both of his. She said nothing more, but let her tears fall freely. Inside her, the word had already risen, clear as day. Yes, that morning, Redemption Creek seemed to know what was coming. The dawn broke clear and bright, mist lifting slow from the grass, leaving silver drops clinging to each blade. Wildflowers along the fence trembled in the breeze, their fragrance drifting soft. Behind the Whitfield Ranch, a small meadow stretched to the tree line, green as a spread cloth, waiting for a quiet ceremony. Jonas led Selina from the porch, his rough palm warm though it trembled, her hand cool yet steady in his. Grace skipped ahead, clutching a wooden pail brimming with daisy petals she had gathered at first light. Her laughter chimed through the yard, easing the hollow place in Jonas's chest. Selina wore a plain white dress she had stitched herself. The fabric was not new, yet her careful hands had shaped it into something graceful, square-necked with light sleeves puffed at the shoulder. Her curls were loose, with sprigs of lavender tucked in Grace's offering. She carried a bouquet of meadow flowers Jonas had hastily bound together. Daisies, sage, a touch of purple clover. Jonas wore only a white shirt frayed at the collar, dark trousers, boots brushed clean, his hair combed back. Nothing fine, but he bore it with the solemnity of a man who meant every breath of this day. They stepped into the meadow. The breeze stirred Selina's skirts and sent petals flying from Grace's pail. The child giggled, tossing handfuls higher, until a sunlit path of wildflowers stretched before them. Selina's eyes roved the empty field. Her voice barely more than breath. "Is this truly a wedding, Jonas?" He stopped and turned to her, tightening his grip. "Yes, because we say it. Island paper and witnesses are only trappings. You are my vow." She looked up into his gray eyes and found no shadows there, only resolve, only peace. Her chest tightened, trembling and steadied all at once. In the center of the meadow they faced each other. Jonas drew from his pocket a wreath he had woven the night before, awkward, uneven, yet wholly sincere. His voice rasped, low but firm. "I have no gold ring, no ceremony fit for grandeur, but I have this love born after loss, yet truer than anything I have known. Selina Carter, stay beside me, not as servant, not as guest, as my wife." Her body quaked. She stared at the wreath petals, bruised, sprigs wilted, yet it pierced her heart sharper than jewels. The town's whispers rose in her mind, the contempt in their eyes. Fear pressed close. Then she saw Grace, standing small but steady, hands clutched on her empty pail, gazing with a faith that asked for no proof. Tears swelled. Selina reached out, her slim fingers trembling into Jonas's rough grasp. "I don't know if love can withstand their judgment, but I know this: I cannot bear to leave again. If you are certain—" "I am," he said, his voice roughened with truth. "Each day left to me, I will choose you." Her sob broke free, yet she nodded. Then yes. Grace leapt, flinging the last of her petals high. White, purple, yellow, fluttered in the sunlight, raining down over them. Jonas placed the wreath upon Selina's head. The wind stirred, the sun flared, and in that breath they were husband and wife, without signature, without sanction, only the silence of earth and sky bearing witness. Jonas bent and kissed her, slow, tender, as if carving the vow into their very bones. Selina trembled, then yielded into his arms. The meadow hushed around them, broken only by Grace's shout of delight. "Now we're truly a family." Selina laughed through her tears, her head resting against Jonas's shoulder. His arms encircled her as he whispered, "Yes, one family." They stood long in the golden light, three shadows fused into one. No witnesses, no congregation, yet the promise made there was enough to begin a lifetime. The fire crackled in the Whitfield hearth, casting warm orange light against the dark timber walls. Outside, the wind rattled the shutters, yet inside, the warmth spread like a blanket unseen. On the rug before the fire, Jonas leaned back against a wooden chair, one arm resting lightly around Selina's shoulders. She nestled into his chest, her curls brushing the line of his collarbone, while Grace curled up in her mother's lap, yawning wide before breaking into a fit of giggles at the story Jonas had just told. "You fell off a horse, Papa?" Grace's eyes grew round, disbelieving that such a thing could happen to a man as strong as Jonas. "Once," Jonas admitted, brushing a hand through her brown hair. "I thought myself untouchable, then a wild gelding taught me better, knocked me flat near enough to break me. But someone helped me up, reminded me a fall isn't the end." Grace laughed softly, then tucked her face into Selina's shoulder. "Then I won't be scared if I fall, because I'll always have Mama and Papa to lift me." The word Mama still shook Selina's heart each time it passed Grace's lips. She doubted she would ever fully grow used to it. Yet tonight, in the circle of arms that held her, fear was nowhere to be found. Jonas lifted his gaze to her, his gray eyes no longer shadowed by grief, but softened with calm. He pressed a kiss to her temple, a small gesture, yet one that carried all the weight of gratitude he could not voice. Selina patted Grace's back, then began to sing. Not the lullaby Eliza once sang, a song heavy with memory, but a tune wholly her own. Her voice was low and rich, soft as velvet cloth. It was not meant to send a child to sleep, but to tell of what she had found, a home raised from ashes, love sprung from sorrow, and a child who had revived two broken hearts. Grace closed her eyes, drinking it in as if every note were water in a desert. Jonas sat motionless, afraid that even the shift of a breath might break the fragile stream. The melody was plain, unpolished, but it was not performance, it was the sound of a soul turning its sigh into song. Selina sang of the meadow where vows had been spoken without witnesses, of the flood that nearly stole Grace but bound them together, of the kitchen filled with cornbread and smoke, of a house still battered yet bright with laughter. When her voice faded, silence pressed down gentle as snow. Only the pop of the fire and Grace's steady breathing remained. Jonas brushed a damp curl from Selina's cheek and whispered, "That was the finest song I ever heard." Selina smiled faintly, weary yet content. "I never thought I'd sing something new. I used to sing only to remember. Now I sing to live." Jonas studied her as though carving her features into memory. "I once believed I could never love again, that Eliza had taken my heart with her. But you and Grace showed me, love doesn't die with the past. It can begin again if we let it." Selina's fingers closed gently over his hand. "I thought my life was only survival, nothing more. Then I stepped into this house, and everything shifted." Jonas bent to press his lips to her brow. They sat quietly, the three of them, a broken man, a woman who had lost everything, and a child who carried tomorrow bound close by firelight. Night fell beyond the windows. Stars pricked the sky. The wind carried the smell of damp earth and meadow grass. The Whitfield ranch was no longer an old house standing lonesome in the wind. It was a home, built from fragments into something whole. Jonas leaned back, drawing Selina and Grace tighter. She rested against his chest, the child asleep across her lap. In that moment, they felt the truth. This was not only a beginning, but the closing of every lonely road behind them. No more words were needed. Some stories of love are not written in ink but in silence, sacrifice, and song. "Some love stories are not written in ink," Jonas murmured, eyes drifting shut, "but in silence, sacrifice, and song." Selina stayed quiet, tears slipping free not from sorrow, but from peace. So it was, in the hush of a prairie night, that a new family came into being. When the last fire in the hearth sank to embers, Jonas pulled a quilt over Selina and Grace. He sat still, listening to their steady breaths, knowing without doubt, after storm and shadow, home was here at last. Selina was no longer servant or guest, but wife, mother, the soul of the house. Grace was no longer the silent child, but the thread binding two once closed hearts. Many love stories are dressed in gold and parchment, painted in bright promises. But for Jonas and Selina, their story was etched in quiet, in sacrifice, in a song. That was how they healed, and that was how they loved. And to you, dear listener, if this story touched you, please like, subscribe to Wild West Love Stories, and share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from those who have known loss, yet still choose kindness and warmth. Perhaps, in these words and in your comments, we may discover new families together,